Hi there, I'm Louise, and welcome to the Salted Pepper, where we cook for real life using real food and we keep it real simple. Today I'm going to show you how to make some delicious homemade sweet potato rolls in the Ninja Foodi. But the Ninja Foodi isn't up here yet because first we're going to use our mixer. Now, usually I don't use a mixer when I do these videos for you. I show you everything by hand, and you can certainly do this recipe by hand. You do not need to have the mixer, and I will link to my video on kneading homemade bread dough right up there so you can take a look at that if you're interested in seeing the technique for how to knead these rolls. But I decided I'm going to use the mixer this time because it does make it really, really easy. And also people have asked, can you use your bread machine and use that to knead? Absolutely. So anything that will do the kneading and the heavy work for you, I'm all for it. And I'm going to use my KitchenAid mixer today. So the first thing we want to do when we're making any type of a yeast roll or bread is proof the yeast. Now, there are some yeast that you don't need to proof. This is one of them. But guess what? I always proof it anyway because I want to make sure it is working. So what I have here is 1 tablespoon of yeast, and I have 2 tablespoons of hot water. Now, what I did was get really hot tap water, and that is usually the right temperature. You want your water between 105 Fahrenheit and 115 Fahrenheit. Anything above 115 degrees Fahrenheit will kill the yeast, so you don't want it too hot. My rule of thumb is I just use a clean finger, obviously, and I just put my finger in the water, and if you can hold it there for a prolonged period of time, then your water is not too hot. And oh, actually, you know what? I want to sprinkle the yeast over the water here. Now you can give it a mix or you don't have to. Usually I do give it a little bit of a mix. All right, so I'm just going to kind of mix it up just to incorporate the yeast into the warm water. Now you could technically put your honey in here also because yeast does like some sugar to really start to proof, but it's not necessary. I'm not going to do it today, but you can. And it's going to look kind of thick and gummy because there's not a whole lot of water combining with this tablespoon of yeast, but that's fine. It's going to work out great. All right, so now we can start to get, while this is proofing, it'll take about 5 minutes or so, we can start to get the other ingredients in the KitchenAid mixer or whatever you're using. If you are gonna do this by hand, you certainly can. You would just want to mix it up in a bowl and that'll be fine, just a large mixing bowl. So what I have here is the flour we're going to use. Now, I almost always use all-purpose flour, except in my roll recipes. I do use bread flour, and I do urge you to get bread flour. It has more gluten in it, and it's just going to produce a better roll for you. And I have 1 2/3 cup of this bread flour. And I'm just going to dump that right into my KitchenAid mixer here. Perfect. And then I have 1/2 teaspoon of salt, which is important. You do want to add that in. It adds flavor, and it's important in bread and rolls and almost all baked goods. All right, let's see. Now, 2 tablespoons of brown sugar can go in now as well. And then what I wanted to talk about real quick is this milk mixture. This is 2 tablespoons of butter with 1/4 cup of half and half. So it's actually not milk, but you could use milk if you wanted. And I warm this up. You want to warm your milk and melt your butter for this recipe. So these are sweet potato rolls, and we have to have sweet potatoes in sweet potato rolls. So what I have here is some sweet potato casserole mixture that I made the other day, and it works perfectly in these rolls. So I will link to that video right up there so you can make your own sweet potato casserole and then use some of it to make these sweet potato rolls. Or you could use canned sweet potatoes that you just mash up, or mashed sweet potatoes, or you could use even pumpkin. I'm sure it would be fine. And you want 1/4 cup. So I'm just gonna measure that out here. I was in the testing phase, so I reserved quite a bit, but I didn't end up needing to use it because these rolls turned out perfect. All right, so about 1/4 cup is all I need. The rest will just sit over here. Now I'm gonna put this right in to the mixture. Because the mixture is pretty hot, this is gonna cool it down. So again, our liquid is not going to kill the yeast that we put in. I'm just gonna stir this up a little bit. Perfect. Now, when you're making any kind of bread or rolls, it's important that you have a little extra water and a little extra flour because the measurements are not exact. They are weather dependent sometimes and altitude dependent. So you really want to have a little bit of extra so that you can make the dough to the exact consistency that you want. All right, so that's all mixed up. And our yeast is a big glob, but it's gonna work out just fine. It absorbed all that water. I'm just gonna put that in. So it didn't bloom in the exact way that I usually like to see it bloom, but it's fine. It's done this before and it works out great. I'm gonna scrape this little bowl out just to get as much out as I can. All right, great. And we're gonna add in 1 egg. So I'm just gonna crack that and add in 1 egg here. And 1 tablespoon of honey. And then we're just gonna dump in this liquid here. And then we're gonna put our dough hook down. Now you could use your mixing paddle if you preferred, that's no problem there. But I'm just gonna go ahead and use the dough hook for everything, just one less thing to clean. So I'm gonna put this down and then turn it on low and start to combine the mixture together. And it's gonna form like a little shaggy kind of a dough at first. So it's coming together, but there are some areas on the side that's not being incorporated. So all you do is just turn the mixer off, pull it up, take your scraper, go in and pull all that flour to the center. And do it again. So I'm just gonna use this at medium speed, low medium. All right, so the dough hook is pulling all of the loose flour into the dough and it's making a nice ball. So now we have a nice ball of dough and I'm gonna turn this off and now is the time to check it. It should be a soft dough, a little tacky, but not super, super sticky. And this might be just a little bit sticky. And this is where your adjustments come in, okay? If it was real crumbly and dry, you would add a teaspoon of water at a time. No more than a teaspoon because you really do not need a whole lot. But mine is a little wet, so I'm gonna add a little bit of flour. And I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna add a teaspoon at a time. You don't wanna add too much because what happens, you end up chasing it. So you put in too much flour and then it's too dry. And then you put in too much water and then it's too wet. And before you know it, you just keep adding and adding and adding. So do this very carefully, cautiously, I should say. So that's about 1.5 teaspoons there. And just put that in and give it another mix. And we'll see what happens. And I can add more until the dough becomes the perfect consistency and texture, which is gonna be soft and just slightly tacky, but not sticky. And honestly, that might have done it. Let's just see here. And that did it, okay? That 1 teaspoon. Now we have a perfect dough because it is tacky, but it is not sticking to my hands. And that is exactly what I want. Now I'm gonna knead it for about 5 minutes. And that just helps to develop the gluten. So I'm just gonna keep this on a medium speed for about 5 minutes and that will knead the bread for us. All right, so this has been kneading for about 3 minutes. And what I'm noticing is on the bottom, it is starting to stick. And that's fine. It happens. No problems. But we need to add a little more flour to get that to not stick, because now our dough is still tacky, but it's actually a little stickier than it was before. So again, I'm just going to add a little bit at a time. I'm going to put it right down there and put this back down, because I don't want the dough to be too tacky or sticky. All right, so what I'm going to do is scrape the bottom here, and I think we are just about done with our dough. I'm going to take it off the dough hook. All right, then I'm going to unhook the bowl and scrape down in here and see, do I want to add some more flour? I don't think I'm going to. It comes out pretty well. It's soft like I want. It's not sticking, so I think we're good to go here. And this is what it looks like when it's done. You can see it's tacky, but it's smooth, okay? That's what you want. You want it to be smooth looking, not craggly like that, okay? You want it to be nice and smooth, and this is very smooth and lovely. Just lovely. I love this dough. It is so soft. All right, so now what we're gonna do, I'm gonna set it in here just for a second until I'm ready for it. We are gonna use this all-purpose pan. I have done a lot of testing with rolls because I have a homemade roll recipe in my Flavors of Fall cookbook. So I have made rolls a lot in the Ninja Foodi. And the container that works the absolute best is this all-purpose pan. And the reason is because it is the right height. When you put rolls into a pan, the closer you put them together, the higher they rise. And that's what makes for a really nice dinner roll. You want them to be a nice high risen roll. So you want something that is between 8 and 9 inches in diameter for this recipe. And you want the tallest pan that you have that fits in the Ninja Foodi. So this one I think is 2.75 inches. So a 3-inch pan would be fine. I did use my springform pan, but unfortunately they rose above it because it wasn't tall enough. So this is the best pan, but if you don't have this kind of pan, you can also make your rolls smaller and just do a few more of them, okay? And that way they'll be more, they'll be shorter in the pan, so they will not rise quite as much. And I'm gonna show you how to get perfect rolls every single time a little bit later once we proof this bread. So the first thing I'm gonna do with this pan is get it buttered. You can use butter, you could use oil, it doesn't really matter, whatever you want. I'm just using probably about a tablespoon of butter, and I'm just gonna butter all around. This is the pan we're gonna bake in, and this is also the pan I'm gonna proof in both times. I mean, why not? Why dirty something else, right? So this butter will be fine for actually making our rolls, so I'm also buttering up the sides. We don't have to butter it again later on. All right, perfect. Now we get our dough ball here and just form it into a nice little disc like this. I just love this dough. It is glorious to work with, I'm telling you. Put it in there, and then you want to cover it with a damp towel. I'm using one of my flour sacks. I use those a lot. I use them for just about everything, and because they're easy to clean and bleach and everything. But they're big. It's really big, so I'm going to fold it up. And this is just damp with some tap water. So I'm going to go ahead and fold it up so it's a little more manageable here. And drape it over. You want to make sure it's completely covering everything though, okay? And drape it over like that. And then I'm also going to stick the silicone top on because we're going to go under dehydration to proof the bread. And don't worry, if you don't have the dehydration function on your Ninja Foodi, I'm going to give you some instructions on how to use the bake roast to do the same process. But we're going to use the dehydration on mine, and we're going to dehydrate at 105 degrees Fahrenheit for 30 minutes, which is basically cutting that proof time in half. And then we'll make the rolls, and then we'll have to proof it again. So this is a 2 proofing process for these rolls. So I'm going to move the mixer out of the way, get the Ninja Foodi up here, and I will show you how to use the dehydration function to proof bread, as well as if you don't have the dehydration function, I'll show you how to do it. All right, so first let me show you how to proof bread or rolls in the Ninja Foodi without the dehydration function. This topic comes up a lot and it's really easy to do. Put your air crisping lid down turn the Ninja Foodi on. You're gonna go to the bake roast function. Take your heat all the way down to 250. This is the lowest temperature you can set, and hit start. You're gonna preheat for about 5 minutes. So if you want, you can turn the timer on and it'll let you know. So you're gonna preheat for 5 minutes, and then what you're gonna do is put your container with your dough on the rack into the Ninja Foodi, turn it off, close the lid. The residual heat from the preheat is what's going to proof your bread, and it works fine. However, I do not advise you put the dough right on the bottom of the Ninja Foodi pot because it is hot, and that contact with the hot surface could kill the yeast off, or at least some of it. So definitely put it in a container covered with a damp towel like I'm doing here, and then a silicone cover, put it on, or a foil would be fine too, and put it on the rack. If you don't want to cover it with silicone or you don't want to cover it with foil, that's fine, but just know the fan from the dehydration is going to dry this out. So you're going to want to check on it about 15-20 minutes in to the proofing process and make sure it hasn't dried up completely. If it's still damp to touch, you're good to go, just leave it in. If it's dry, just moisten it again and then recover. All right, so you got that. So preheat for 5 minutes, put the bread in, or the roll, the dough, whatever you're doing, pizza dough, whatever you're doing that you need to rise, and then close the lid, but keep the Foodi off. So I'm gonna go ahead and turn it off now because I don't need to do that. I'm gonna use the dehydration function. So choose dehydration and go down to 105 and hit start. It defaults to 6 hours. That's the lowest time setting, so I don't even pay any attention to that. I just know when it's 5 hours and 30 minutes left, I'm done proofing the first time. All right, so I'm gonna lift that up here. You might even be able to just preheat on 250 for like 3 minutes because it's, I don't know, it's not really that hot. Nah, I'd go the whole 5. All right. There we go. Now it goes in, and then the fan will circulate the hot air. It's just warm. 105 degrees is like bath water warm, and it will quicken up the proofing process. So the yeast, it's a wonderful environment for them in there, and they will multiply quicker, and that's why your bread proofs a little bit faster than on the counter, where all kinds of things can interfere with proofing bread. The weather, the temperature in your house, if it's really cold, it definitely can interfere with that. And if you don't want to use the Ninja Foodi for proofing, you can also use your oven. You know, turn your oven on 250 for 5-10 minutes, turn it off, put your container with your bread in, covered with a moist towel, and let it sit in the oven. That'll work too. All right, so it's been 30 minutes, and our dough has been proofing in the Ninja Foodi, so I'm going to go ahead and lift the lid. Now, this is not hot or anything. 105 degrees is not going to be hot at all. And just pull this out. And then what you want to check for is that your dough has doubled in size, which ours has. Nicely, so that's good, and so it looks, it's all doubled now. And we can move this rack out of the way. I will be using it again because we have to go and proof these after we form the rolls. Okay, so, and you're not going to want to hear this, but the best way to form these rolls is to weigh them out. You don't have to, but it is the best way to do it. Because you want them to be about 2 ounces a piece. That will give you the exact rise that you want so it doesn't come above the pan. It will give you about 9 or 10 rolls depending on the total weight of the dough here. Now you can see now that it has risen, it is a beautiful elastic dough. It's a wonderful dough to work with. Now to form your buns, your rolls, there is a technique that will help you get those perfect tops on your rolls. You know, the ones that you just are gorgeous. And that is to take your dough, fold it over, and pop it through your fingers like this. Just like that. Now that is probably a little, no, it's 1.8 ounces, so that's perfect. That is fine. Between 1.8 and 2.2, it's perfectly fine. Then put that into your dish like that and just keep going with the dough. So I usually just take it like this and then pop it through my fingers just like that and twist it off and weigh it. And that's 2 ounces. That's perfect. Now, if it is sticking to your hands, this really isn't sticking too bad. You can flour your hands, that's fine, but you don't want to do too much flour at this point. So I'm going to finish doing this for all of the rolls. That's 2.2, that's fine. And if it starts to tear like that, I just usually go to another place because you don't want that tear on top. Okay, good. That's 1.8. That one's a little heavy. So if you get one that's too heavy, don't worry about it. Just pinch the bottom and do it again. And then take off and twist the bottom. And that's 2. That's perfect. I think this is one of my favorite doughs to work with. It's so soft. It's just wonderful to work with. And that's 2.2. I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit off of there to make it more closer to 2. There we go. That might be a little guy. 1.6, so he needs some more. So if you do it a little bit too little, not weighing enough, just take a little piece, put it underneath. Do the same thing though, okay? Squeeze it between and twist it off at the bottom. That stretches that top and it gives you the perfect dome on your roll. My mom does it with her thumb, but I don't know. I just do it this way. All right. Now the other thing, the closer together the rolls are, the higher the rise. So it's okay to have them touching. That's fine. I usually put 6 or 7 and then 3 in the middle. So 7 around, 3 in the middle will give you 10 rolls. And that's about what we have here. And it's okay, like if you have smaller rolls, put those in the center. And the reason being is that the center rolls are always the ones that are the hardest to get done. So it's okay if they're a little smaller in the center. That'll actually work out to your benefit. Now this one is pretty small, 1.4. So I'm gonna take a bigger guy here. Oh, he's 2, he's 2. Let's see what this one is. One of the ones that's 2.2 like this, and I'm gonna go ahead and just take a little bit off, just to even it out a little bit. Now, you don't have to be this exact, you really don't, but they're going to rise and be even and look beautiful. Now, the end one I don't twist off because we're out of the dough, so I just do it like that and put it in there. All right, those look good, and they are already starting to rise. That's how they look. There's 10 dinner rolls in there. I think 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. Yep, 10 dinner rolls. Now we're gonna do the same thing. We are gonna go back and proof it again. We wanna cover it with a damp towel, and we're gonna do the dehydration again. Don't want it sopping wet, but you do want it damp. Okay, perfect. I'm gonna put my silicone cover back on just so the fan doesn't dry it out. We're gonna go back in and we'll go back under dehydration for the remaining time. If your towel gets in the way, just tuck it down, that's fine. All right, perfect. Now we will go 30 more minutes and then we'll be ready to bake up our sweet potato rolls. All right, so we have just finished the 30-minute second proof. And we can open up the lid. Now again, it's not hot, so you don't need any gloves or anything to do this. And then we're gonna take the little silicone off and take the towel off. And you can see that the rolls have risen. And that is about how we want them to be. So they've about doubled in size, and that's fine. Now, if you went a little longer than the 30 minutes, you could do that. It's not gonna hurt anything. But you definitely want to give them at least 30 minutes to double in size. All right, so now we want to preheat, and we're going to do that on the bake roast function. We're going to take the temperature down to 350. We only need to preheat for 5 minutes, so I'm gonna set the timer for 25 minutes. Preheat for 5 and then we'll cook for 5. So what we're gonna do is cover these rolls with silicone or foil would be fine. And we're gonna bake them at 350 for 20 minutes. And then we will uncover them and continue to bake maybe 3 to 5 more minutes just until the tops get brown. Then we'll let them cool and then we can taste them, which is always the best part. All right, so we have preheated for almost 5 minutes. I'll let it go the whole way until we hit 20. And then I'll open the lid and we'll set this in, close the lid, and let it cook for 20 minutes. You don't need to check it during that time at all because it's not gonna burn or overcook during that 20 minutes. All right. So just lower this in and lower your lid and wait 20 minutes and then we'll uncover it and we will get it back under bake roast on 350 still to brown up the top. Or you could even drop the heat down. If you needed to cook the rolls a little bit longer, you can drop the heat down. But we'll get into that when we see how they're done after 20 minutes. So we just have a few seconds to go on our 20-minute cook time, and then I'm gonna open up the crisper lid, pull the silicone lid off, and we're gonna go ahead and bake roast again on the 350 temperature, and I'm just gonna check it every minute until the tops are golden brown. Then we could actually brush the tops with some butter if you'd like, or not. Either way, they're delicious. I'm not touching the pot, okay? All right. Oh, they're looking good already. Oh my goodness. This is really hot, so don't pick it up without having something on. Wow. Look at that browning. Oh my gosh, I don't even think we need to really go under the bake roast any longer. They look good. The test recipes, I did go under the bake roast for a minute. They weren't quite as brown on top. These look fantastic. All right, you know what? Let's get a temp of them. Not something you have to do. You don't have to, but I just like to know because especially these center ones can take a little bit longer to cook. So as long as they're about 180, I'm going to be fine with it. If they don't get up to 180, I will go back on the bake roast. They're getting up to about 160. So I think I'm going to go a little bit longer, which because they look so brown, I am now going to drop the temperature down so I don't need to brown the top like I have in the test recipes. So I'm going to go ahead and take the bake roast, but I'm going to take the down to 250 and go 5 more minutes. And that should bring that temperature up. It'll also continue to cook while it cools, so you don't have to worry about it being completely like 200 degrees, which is about the average temperature that bread will get when it's done inside. But we do want it up into like the 180 mark because then it'll just finish up as it cools. So this is another, example of how when you follow recipes, you can't always follow them exactly because things change. There are variables that happen. And even though I have tested this recipe exactly the same way each and every time, I have a different result today than I did the last test, which I did 2 days ago. And that is that the tops browned up more. I don't know exactly why. Maybe I preheated a little bit longer. I really don't know exactly why that happened, but it does happen in real life. And so just make adjustments as you go. So if your tops aren't as brown as mine, keep it at 350 and bake 5 more minutes, or actually don't go the whole 5 minutes. Check on it every minute because I set it for 5 minutes yesterday and didn't check on it and they had kind of gotten too dark on top. So keep an eye on it. But if they look brown like this, drop your heat down and go a few more minutes on a lower temperature and that will not brown up the top as much. And also just keep looking at them. All right, we're just coming down the last couple of seconds. So let's just take a peek and see. And they look beautiful. So I'm going to go ahead and get a temp. Again, this is not necessary, guys. I just do it because I want to make sure that they are cooked in the middle. And we are up to almost over 180. We are done. So that is beautiful. The tops did not get too brown. I love that. If you wanted to, you could certainly brush them with some butter. just look great. Whew. All right, that looks gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. All right, so now I'm gonna get my gloves on so I can take this rack out because it is super hot. And we need to let them cool just a little bit. Not too much, but we just want to get that internal temperature up a little bit, and that will happen as they cool. I advise you taking it off this rack, although some people use it as a cooling rack. I do not because I have dropped food off of it. You don't want to go to all the trouble of making a beautiful pan of rolls and then drop them on the floor, so I recommend putting them on another rack to cool. Look at that. They are gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous, and they smell amazing. So let's give them about 5 minutes. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip them over so you can see the underside as well. But you wouldn't have to do that if you were serving them. You could just reach in and just grab one up. But I'm going to flip them out so you can see. If you wanted to cook the underside a little bit more because they are soft, you certainly can. If you wanted to get a crunchier underside, just flip them over, put them back on the rack, and put the bake roast down on 350 for a few minutes, and you'll get those toasted up as well. All right, so 5 minutes, and then we will dig in, and I will taste this roll. All right, so it's been just about 5 minutes. You can let them cool all the way, too. I mean, no problems there, but I'm going to go ahead and flip them out just so you can see the underside, and then I will pull one out of the center because those are always the ones that are tricky, and we will taste that one. Or I will taste that one, and I will describe it for you. All right. Turn it this way so it doesn't keep falling off. Then just pull that off. Oh my gosh, they look great. They look perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. They are cooked all the way through. They are exactly the texture I would want to see on the bottom of my rolls. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. I am so excited about this. All right, so let's get to tasting. So I'm gonna pull out one of the outer ones, but I'm gonna taste one of the inside ones because those are the ones that are the hardest to get done. So let's just pull this apart here. And of course the rolls should pull apart. Oh my gosh, aren't they gorgeous? They're light and fluffy. Oh my goodness. Oh, they're perfect. They are absolutely perfectly cooked. Wow. They're beautiful, guys. Absolutely beautiful. And really simple to do. So even if you're not a bread maker, give it a try, really. All right, can't have a roll without butter. And these are sweet potato rolls. So in case you are tuning in a little bit later in the video, they're not regular rolls, they're sweet potato rolls. They kind of remind me of like maybe a Hawaiian roll. They're really, really good. Okay, let's give it a taste. Wow. I have to say, these are the best rolls that I've ever had. And my aunt makes the best rolls. And that is the recipe that I have in my Flavors of Fall cookbook. I just adapted it for the Ninja Foodi. Hands down, they are the most delicious rolls ever. But these are better. They are. Just, I mean, by a smidge. They're a little sweeter. The texture. Spot on. I really hope you give this recipe a try. I know you're going to be happy with it. You're gonna love these rolls, and they are impressive. They look absolutely beautiful. They will look great on your table.